Today, I would like to talk about criticism that kills. The reason why criticism is such a life-killing agent is because it induces fear. Fear hijacks your brain. It creates amygdala hijacking, which eventually completely takes over your brain and stops life force from flowing through you. This is why in managing fear and facing fear, understanding how to work with or against criticism, including criticism from other people and criticism within yourself, is utmost important. Let's say you spill a glass of water. While this seems like an innocent mistake, those of us who have extremely strong inner critic might view that as a total failure. They might have thought like, wow, I can't even do anything right. I'm such a loser. And because I'm such a loser, my friend will no longer want to hang out with me. My boss will fire me, and eventually I'll end up homeless on the street. So as you can see, a simple trigger such as a mistake could cause that much anguish within someone who's gone through trauma or abuse of certain degree. Now, you don't have to be a victim of trauma or abuse to already have a really strong critic. It might just be that within your upbringing, your parents were very strict, or you have a lot of societal pressure, or within a relationship in your adulthood, someone might criticize you way too much, and you have internalized that programming to strengthen your inner critic that you are somehow unworthy, not good enough, unlovable, defective in any kind of way. It doesn't matter how small the trigger is. When the inner critic is present, there typically is a sense of blowing things out of proportion. And you find yourself start describing yourself with statement that includes never and always. I never do anything right. I always do this. No wonder why nobody loves me. No wonder why I don't have a job. No wonder why blah, 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 blah. The inner critic attack can come out in different forms. The most common form is perfectionism. It is when you are a perfectionist, that you have certain standard that you have to meet, and nothing you ever do seems to be good enough. And anything that you've achieved that maybe you're briefly proud of it all is still not good enough. Inner critic can also compare yourself with others. You can find yourself comparing to your friend, comparing to your family, or even comparing to yourself. The inner critic attack can get very severe when you are flashing back to various programming in the past that you have endured through abuse in parenting or relationship or in school system. So the most damaging inner critic attack, in my opinion, is catastrophizing. This is when you go from a small failure or incident or even a medium one. Let's say like you fuck up a little bit. You will find yourself constantly catastrophize in ways that convince you how you're unlovable and everyone will leave you and your relationship will crumble, and because it will crumble, maybe you should leave. Maybe you should just call it a loss. Typically, inner critic attack results in homelessness, in complete isolation, and that is no way to live. Whenever you find yourself under the inner critic attack, it's important to manage this, and I will explain how in the later timestamp. Now, I would like to move on to the outer critic. The outer critic is also a program that stems from the inner critic. This is the part of the critic that have morphed into other form of life-killing agent. So instead of judging yourself, the outer critic judge others. And the outer critic is a little bit different than the inner critic when it comes to managing. Because with the inner critic, you can see that you are down yourself, that you need to give yourself more self-love. But the outer critic can typically bypass unnoticed, especially if you have not been trained to recognize this programming within yourself. So for example, someone who likes to argue a lot, or rather have a fight response in conflict, would typically judge others. When this person is trying to do self-work, they might look at others and think, well, but this person doesn't do this, so why am I doing this? This is unfair. The outer critic also have very similar attack to the inner critic. The outer critic might also stem from perfectionism tendency, where they might have certain standard that they force others to comply. Or it might also catastrophizes. For example, they might think, wow, this person have once again misplaced my scissors somewhere. And they have misplaced so many things before and remember that one time, and because of that they are incredibly effective, and I do not want to deal with this anymore. This time I will break up with them for real. The attack of the outer critic is extremely life-killing and intimacy dulling. When you are someone who's going through intimacy and you're flashing back to the inner critic program that were given to you by a caretaker who desired too much of you, by society or by school, whatever it is, this inner critic will morph into the outer critic and place that blame on other people instead. This is so that you can avoid intimacy. And that is why it's also very important to manage the outer critic as well as the inner critic. So, how do you re-establish that connection to the life force within you and stop the inner critic as well as the outer critic or any critic program from hijacking your brain and stopping you from enjoying life? Here are a few ways you can do that. The most effective exercise is thought stopping or thought correction. So in order to do this, you have to have a certain amount of anger. There are certain mantras that you can recite when you find yourself under the inner critic attack, when it's trying to hijack your brain. I will include these mantras in the link down below. Here's an example. If you find yourself under perfectionism attack, you might say something like, no, I am good enough. I am good enough in my effort, in all the achievement that I've achieved. I will not let any abuser from the past or my parental programming or my school system or society to tell me that I am not good enough. My effort is enough. I'm a human being. I'm allowed to make mistake. And even if I make mistake, I never, ever beat myself over it. Statements that describe me as never and always are grossly inaccurate. And I refuse to take in these programming that have played my mind for far too long. Another method of showing anger to the critic programming is to actually physically do something that shows your anger. This might include hitting a pillow with a bat. Some people keep a hose with a phone book and hit the phone book with the hose. Me, I typically think of a shadow expression that I have, which is the tigress, where I shoo away attacker that don't have my best interest in mind. It would look something like, I'm a tigress, not a kitty, okay? In order to stop an outer critic attack, when you are judging others or feeling like they're defective, and you need to run away from them or run away from intimacy, you might say something like, no, I will not let any programming of my past abuser that have been programmed within myself, that have made me feel bad about myself, and I will refuse to put this programming onto others in the way that they do not deserve. No one deserves criticism that kills. I am safe within my environment. I am safe within my relationship. And if I am unsafe in any way, I know I have the legal aid to help me achieve justice. But I refuse to let my abuser win and put this unfair criticism onto my fellow human being. In order to shrink the outer critic, angering is a very important aspect in shrinking your inner critic and outer critic. If you find yourself unable to be angry at your critic programming, Start small, start challenging it, start talking back, and a simple thought stopping, no, I refuse to think this, would be good enough. But eventually, angering is needed because it leads to something much more cathartic. Self compassion is typically released through crying. And for those of you who have undergone through so much abuse and trauma, you need to cry. You need to cry because you've undertaken too much for far too long. And no one, not even your friends, not even your significant others, not even your family, get to tell you who you are, how do you live in a way that is not life nurturing. The life force within you deserves to be nurtured and nourished and cared for. It deserves to be released and expressed. The criticism that induces fear is life blocking, is rough, is tough. It's not what you should harbor within your psyche. You don't have to live like this. You don't have to live under the incessant worrying and blaming of yourself and others just because someone had put that baggage on you. Therefore, to practice self-compassion, allow yourself to cry. Allow yourself to grieve all the time that you've been judged unfairly. Allow yourself to grieve for all the time that you could have received feedback that nurtures, that nourishes, that help you feel more alive and conducive, that help you grow and feel more alive instead of shrinking you. So again, the two ways of managing critic attack is angering and crying. Or in other form, thought stopping, thought correction, and self-compassion. Another exercise that might help decrease the programming of the inner critic is to recite 5 positive interaction or 5 positive attributes with another person when it comes to outer critic and within yourself too. So whenever you find yourself under inner critic or outer critic attack, try to remember positive interaction that have happened in the past so as to stop the programming from hijacking your brain and causing strain within the relationship. On receiving and giving feedback, how do we give and receive feedback in a way that is life nourishing? When it comes to giving feedback, I would like you to remember that within each conflict, your person that is having a fight with you, they are giving you stimulus that reminds you of all the time that someone has judged you unfairly or have abused you in some way. And because of this, you are having unmet needs deep within, far, far in, that you are just now aware of. So take a step back and notice the unmet need deep within. Your needs can be met by yourself, by many others, and not just this person. Try to phrase it in a very clear way. I'm feeling, insert your feeling, and I need, insert your need. You can say your observation, but it has to be the actual observation of what is happening right now, the words that are being said, the actions that are taken, not your assumption or your evaluation of it. It will greatly harm your relationship if you diagnosed or assumed or assign anything in any way or criticize them back. Criticism kills. So on receiving and giving feedback, feedback should be life nurturing and life nourishing. It should also be typically sandwiched. John Gottman have said that usually the ideal ratio for relationship that thrive is 5 to 1. 5 positive feedback to 1 negative feedback. Try to think about how to say things in a way that would be easy for the other person to hear. As you are doing this, as you are giving feedback in a way that have taken consideration of your fellow listener, you will find that the chances of your needs being met are greatly increased. Another tip on receiving feedback is to not hear the criticism. Don't hear people's criticism and you will live much longer. Instead of hearing the attack of the criticism, try to translate them into 4 things. What are you observing, or what is this person observing within this criticism? What is this person feeling? Are they perhaps feeling frustrated, hurt, angry, desperate, whatever it is? Try to guess what they're feeling and what is it that they're needing. Are they in need of more autonomy, more respect, more consideration? Try to see what their need is. And lastly, what is their request? What is it that they're requesting so that they will have their need met? So for example, when you hear a criticism or a complaint, such as when your wife tells you, I told you to buy more carrots and you forgot about it. You might hear that as a complaint, and that is very confusing, but deep down there might be a request. It might be her saying, can you go back to the store and grab the carrot for me? Or it might be that they have a need to feel like they could rely on their loved ones to remember their request. Try to identify their feelings, their needs, or what they're observing, but I will go about that in another video. If you are depressed, that means one thing. You think that you are not good enough, and that means you are under the attack of the inner critic or the outer critic. Depression happens when you've taken the judgment for others and put that on yourselves. Depression does not lead to growth. It is also fear-based. It is a life-killing agent. It will take away your life force and put you into freeze mode. When you notice yourself under depression, practice thought stopping via angering and allow yourself to cry to evaporate the hurt and come to self-compassion. Love is the cure. Self-compassion is the cure. Self-love is the cure. And so when you are depressed, remember to take the judgment out of the equation. When giving feedback, remember the same thing. Be kind. Be as kind as possible. Life is hard. People go through a lot of shit. Some people with a lot of trauma and abuse might swing the opposite extreme, where they feel like they need to fight for every point, for every of their needs to be met. And some people in the spiritual community might feel like it's their birthright to demand their needs to be met. Demanding is not a request, because demanding comes with guilt tripping, with punishment, with angry face. And so when someone demands you of something, that is not a request. When you only focus on changing someone's behavior, that will actually decrease the chances of your needs being met. And the other person who talks to you that way might also greatly decrease the chances of their needs being met. So remember, be kind, give feedback in the utmost kind way. And if you find yourself unable to do so, give yourself more self-compassion, more empathy. Step back, take time out, give yourself sufficient empathy, or seek empathy from other support, other sources. And eventually, when you've sufficiently given yourself enough self-love, revisit the conversation. This step is also very important when you're trying to translate the criticism or the feedback of a very angry person. When someone is that angry at you, just remember, you don't have to answer them immediately. You don't have to even say anything that might harm the relationship. Take a step back, give yourself sufficient empathy before you return, and discuss ways to have both of the needs met. Feedback or request that brings life about focuses on a win-win situation where the needs of both sides are met. And if there are any point where you're playing the game of, is this person right or wrong, or am I right or wrong, take a step back and know that you don't have to play that game. Do not engage in criticism that kills, whether it is from yourself, from others. Give yourself sufficient empathy. Use thought stopping and angering, and even cry if you need to. You are worth it. You are lovable. You are good enough. And there's no amount of programming and abuse that you've received that contradicts this fact. You work so hard on yourself and you come such a long way where you've been. So even if you have bad days, even if you make mistakes, always remember to be kind to yourself. I would like to share with you an example of how thought stopping or angering and crying and self-compassion look like. So I'm noticing some trigger that brings me back to the time where I've been criticized unfairly or in an unkind manner. And here is how I would do it within myself. And I would even say this out loud if I'm driving somewhere or somewhere where I'm completely alone. I am good enough. I am good enough, and no, I refuse to take the unfair criticism that's been put on me, whether it is from my loved one, my significant other, my best friend, or anyone that had been the closest to me, my past caretaker. I refuse to let all of their criticism and all of their abuse in various degrees to get to me, because I know me. I've worked so hard on myself. I have the empathy and the goodness within myself to go through life without having to be attacked, to be looked down upon, and to be abused in any amount of way. I've made mistakes, and I've made mistakes that I'm not proud of. But that does not mean that I get to be yelled at or to be insulted or to be unkind to in any way. And I refuse to replay these criticism over and over in my head, thinking if there's something wrong with me. I have the capacity to reflect and to grow within my own way, within my own pace. But someone yelling at me and taking life force out of me is not what I would tolerate. I will stand up for myself. I will remember the positive attributes that I have. I will remember the time that I've supported friends, loved ones, and all of the time that I've gone above and beyond to meet the needs of those closest to me. Just because someone is unhappy about something, or even just because I make a mistake, does not mean I get to be yelled at or be set down and to be told unkind things. I also refuse to take this anger, to take the abuse of my abuser and put it on others. My fellow human being are loving and peaceful, and I refuse to ruin my relationship just because someone ruined with me. I do not take this. So that's how angering and crying look like. At the end of this, you should feel a sense of relief. Towards the end, I use an energy within my psyche that I call the tigress energy to shoo away any critic programming that I've been given to by anyone, even strangers, to go away. This is my shadow self in its best form, It was created to protect me in a way that is self-contained, that is meant to produce self-compassion instead of lashing it out on others and even the person that gave you criticism. All of that is for you to build the self-esteem you need in order to protect yourself or in order to empathically receive criticism and feedback that might have triggered within you some deep unmet needs. I hope that this was helpful for you. I love you so much. You are good enough. You don't have to take shit. Not from anyone. Not even your most beloved person. Give yourself sufficient empathy. Say no to criticism that kills, and say yes to life-nourishing feedback. Take the feedback and grow and move on. But don't give away parts of yourself. You are beautiful. Let your life force express itself. Until next time.